Hi friends, today is 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Am I not as free as anyone else? Am I not an apostle? Haven't I seen Jesus our Lord with my own eyes? Isn't it because of my work that you belong to the Lord? Wonder what Paul's thinking about here. Even if others think I'm not an apostle, I certainly am to you. You yourselves are proof that I am the Lord's apostle. This is my answer to those who question my authority. Don't we have the right to live in your homes and share your meals? Don't we have the right to bring a believing wife with us as the other apostles and the Lord's brothers do, and as Peter does? Or is it only Barnabas and I who have to work to support ourselves? I love how candid Paul is when he's writing his letters. He's writing these letters to real people. It's so amazing to me. I'm so thankful. This is not just a fairy tale. This is real history that's happened, and we get to read a part of it and to be blessed by it and be taught by it. Have I told you how thankful I am for the Bible lately? Well, I am. So verse 7, what soldier has to pay his own expenses? What farmer plants a vineyard and then doesn't have the right to eat some of its fruit? What shepherd cares for a flock of sheep and isn't allowed to drink some of the milk? Am I expressing merely a human opinion, or does the law say the same thing? For the law of Moses says, you must not muzzle an ox to keep it from eating as it treads out the grain. Was God thinking only about oxen when he said this? Wasn't he actually speaking to us? Yes, it was written for us, so that the one who plows and the one who threshes the grain might both expect a share of the harvest. Since we have planted spiritual seed among you, aren't we entitled to a harvest of physical food and drink? If you support others who preach to you, shouldn't we have an even greater right to be supported? But we never have used this right. We would rather put up with anything than be an obstacle to the good news about Christ. Don't you realize that those who work in the temple get their meals from the offerings brought to the temple? And those who serve at the altar get a share of the sacrificial offering? In the same way, the Lord ordered that those who preach the good news should be supported by those who benefit from it. Yet I have never used any of these rights, and I'm not writing this to suggest that I want to start now. In fact, I would rather die than lose my right to boast about preaching without charge. Yet preaching the good news is not something I can boast about. I am compelled by God to do it. How terrible for me if I didn't preach the gospel, the good news. Wow. Wow, Paul. Verse 17. If I were doing this on my own initiative, I would deserve payment. But I have no choice, for God has given me this sacred trust. What then is my pay? It is the opportunity to preach the good news without charging anyone. That's why I never demand my rights when I preach the good news. Even though I am a free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring the Jews to Christ. When I was with those who follow the Jewish law, I too lived under that law. Even though I'm not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring to Christ those who are under the law. When I am with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I too live apart from that law so I can bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God. I obey the law of Christ. When I am with those who are weak, I share their weaknesses, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing anything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessings. Don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away. But we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I am not just shadowboxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. Wow, friends, we really got to see a perspective of Paul that we may not have noticed before, just reading the plain text without even trying to interpret it. We're just reading it. And we see his perspective in a lot of different areas. And we see that he was a real person who was talking to other real people, and he had a real connection with them and a real relationship. I feel like so much like a mother to a child or a father to a child, a real relationship where you've poured into someone's life and you're expecting a return for your investment. Maybe not necessary repayment for yourself, but you're expecting them to reach a goal or to accomplish something and be successful. Or especially, you're expecting them to live in a godly manner. And so there were several verses that really stood out to me. Verse 12. Verse 12 says, "If you support others who preach to you, shouldn't we have an even greater right to be supported? But we have never used this right." And I love this part that Paul says, "We would rather put up with anything than be an obstacle to the good news about Christ." I'm going to write that verse down, and I just want to spend some time talking to the Lord, especially checking to see if there's some area in my life that has become an obstacle to other people knowing the good news about Jesus, because I certainly don't want that. So I pray that you will spend some time with the Lord yourself. That's where we grow and become more like Him. And I would love if you put a verse down that speaks to you or share some type of insight you have. Be blessed, friends.